watch it later. The main reason I'm desperate to find out is I think there's a lot more going on than I know about, and I wanna help. Do what I do best is, like the generative research piece. I know Ian's awesome. He has really taken on so much and did such a good job with what he's been helping you out with. I just want to be part of that conversation about like what are you guys up to? What are you planning? So then I can know if I need to help him or if I need to do some stuff for him because he's got other stuff that you guys need him to work on, that kind of thing. So you're my first stop on this tour this week of how you planning? How's it going? What's 12/6, 12/7 look like? Yeah.
Okay.
Trying not to come
Yeah.
off too desperate too.
No, it's great. Um, okay, so let me think of the best ways that I could say this. So maybe it helps to zoom out really quick and just talk
Yeah.
about some of our sort of overall deliverables. So like each month, at the end of the month, we update our strategy and direction pages. And we
Okay.
update those with what are we going to be working on and why, and what aren't we going to be working on, and we link to issues there. So
Hmm.
that to me is the single source of truth that we are that's like our roadmap that we're representing to our customers and to our users.
Okay.
Whether or not they go view that, that sometimes, and actually some people do. I've
Yeah.
spoken to some customers who say, I've already read through all of that. I just want to now hear you talk about it so I can and give you feedback, which is great.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
that if you look at that as a single source of truth, what comes from that is a bunch of issues that are linked that slot into specific milestones that have certain labels.
Yeah.
But that rolls into that document. What also rolls into that is our kickoff document, our kickoff video comes from that
Uh-huh.
as well. So like the videos we record, that's all coming from issues that we're all talking about there. And to end up at that point where we can update the strategy and direction page, we use a variety of sensing mechanisms. So we're reading through all of the issues. So I subscribe to my group and DevOps stage labels, as well as all my category labels. And of course, just like living in it every day, I'm familiar with what's in the backlog, and then I'm seeing all
Hmm.
the updates that are coming through. So I see comments and questions from users. Um, Another avenue is I follow along in several customer Slack channels, so I'm seeing what are our customers saying. If they
Hmm.
and sometimes they ask me specific questions or bring forth specific issues.
Yeah.
Um, we also have user interviews that we're always doing, so like that's
Hmm.
another avenue. Like one track for the user interview is what we're doing with what Ian's doing right now, the people he's
Hmm.
interviewing, where we've gone through a problem validation, a survey, and a user interview. Another round for that is I'm always in issues talking to users or in GitLab forums or on Reddit and telling people
Good
like,
for you.
I'd love to talk to you if you want, if you're open to it. And those are informal. That's for me to
Hmm.
hear about something specific, and maybe that will change how I prioritize something or how I think about something.
Hmm.
And then there's other things that we do, like there's top issues requested by the technical account managers. Is like
Okay.
that hasn't been updated in a while, but that's something that that is useful. I could go back and see like what are the top requested issues by technical account managers, and I could see how those things are being addressed. I believe that's due like a quarterly update coming soon. So hopefully, I know
Oh,
Scott
okay.
is following up on that. That's another helpful sensing mechanism. And of course, I mentioned like the Reddit and Hacker News thing because it's good to find negative customer sentiment from the community of users
Hmm.
in sort of this like unfiltered format, and we've used that to prioritize and define a lot of things. Like when I first started, our biggest source of negative customer sentiment was around the NPM registry. You couldn't do authentication; it didn't work for groups. Those things have all been resolved, so now
Yay.
we don't see that negative customer sentiment anymore. Okay, so that kind of describes like the sensing mechanisms that go into planning sort of the high level vision and strategy, and then that vision and strategy comes the given milestones.
Right.
So when I go to plan a specific milestone, I'm thinking about a couple of different things. I'm thinking about, are there any security bugs or violations that need to get addressed? And those should always go to the top of the list because we need to make sure our platform is secure. And
Yeah.
usually those things are pretty well defined if there is. There we get these like security bug reports. I forget where they come from, but I'll get an issue submitted to me that seems automatically generated, and then I can
Okay.
prioritize that and put that at the top of the list. The next thing that we have is our bugs, so security, and then we have bugs and regressions. And
Hmm.
Dan and I have a process where we are going through a spreadsheet basically that gets generated, that this is a list of all of our bugs, the priority and severity, as well as like how long since they've been resolved. And so we're looking at our SLOs. We're looking at like the popularity of the bugs, how many upvotes do they have, and things like that. And is it feasible for us to solve the bugs?
Hmm.
So we are recently arriving at this method of saying we want to try and pull in at least one bug per engineer per milestone. So like in this case, in 12.5 we pulled in, I think, 4 or 5 bugs.
Nice.
And then after that, we start to think about features. And for me, what we have done over the past maybe a couple of months is we ended up arriving at a set of 5 epics that we've planned. And those epics each have, and I could start to share my screen now.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'll pull up one as an example. Okay. So like what I've been doing from a planning perspective is organizing an epic for the next several milestones based on what we've learned from all of those things that I just mentioned. So one specific theme that we want to tackle is lower the cost of the registry by improving storage management. This we heard over and over again in all of those different avenues. And so kind of give like, what are the goals of this epic? We want an improved user experience. We want an expanded API and performant API. We want a UI driven retention and expiration policies. We think about the target audience, like what are the outcomes? How will we know if we were successful? Like in it looks like this ends in January 2020. So January 2020, how will we know if we successfully completed this epic? And then I put in things like important decisions that we've made. We have been doing these think big discussions for the package team where originally we met once a week and we went through each of these epics just to sort of level set the team because we had a lot of new people, and
Sure.
making sure we all knew like what are the core epics and what are we working on. And now we're sort of using those discussions as like, where should we be in a year or 2 from now? Or what other
Oh, that's
ideas does
awesome.
the development team have? And so things come out, and I linked to the videos here. But then you could see the issues all linked, so they're in order. Usually if this blue dot here, it means that they've been resolved or completed, and then you could see the green ones are still need to be scheduled, and that they go in this milestone more or less. This one is kind of out of order. Um, but generally you could go through and you could see like, okay, here are all the issues planned for up through 12.7. And there's 4 more epics that are like this. I don't have to open up each one. But generally what's happening is we're putting these issues here, and then Ian and I are working together. We have weekly sync meetings, and we're trying to align to say, okay, for doing this like retention and expiration policy, we need to make sure that we're starting to think about, in this case, we already did user research for this.
Right.
And so the next thing is a design, and then we'll do solution validation. In other cases, maybe it would be helpful to look at some different epics. Like, here we go. Here's like our next priority epic: create visibility and transparency for the package and container registry. And so like this epic is basically redesigning the entire user experience for our stage. So we're going to conduct user research and evaluate what data and evidence is required by users. That sounds familiar, right?
Yes.
Um, redesign. So now in 12.5, we have these tasks for Ian to synthesize the results and do a redesign. And then we'll work on improving the user experience. And again, all of these things have issues that are slated out for the next several milestones. So that's kind of like we are trying to have this like 3 to 6 milestone view of what's important and how those things will unfold. So then that's basically how one, and then once a milestone gets defined, then basically I go in and I create all of the issues. For the bugs, I'll go in and make sure, for instance, like this bug was created to by the engineers, but I always like to go in and make sure that like we have a clear problem to solve, that if anyone that's not familiar with the issue, that you can go in and you could read the problem to solve and at least kind of understand what's going on. And then each of the issues that we create are very similar. So for me, I like to create issues that I always give background. So I feel like I'm always writing the first some form of these sentences, like what's the container registry or what's the package registry, just in case someone, that they're not familiar with our stage, they get some background. I'm a big fan of user stories and acceptance criteria, so I try to do that. We include the intended users, and the further details in the proposal will change. Like in this case, I'm like, okay, well, what are our goals? What are we proposing? Are there any examples that I could put in here, like code snippets, or like this is one of our competitors' user interface, so we could use this as like examples of things that we can iterate off of. And then we put in what are the permissions needed for this, what documentation needs to update. Usually I'll call out anything if there needs to be some testing that is like in the, my spidey sense is tingling, that like, oh, we should make sure that we test permissions levels, or we should make sure we test performance or something like that. And then we usually add in what does success look like and how will we measure it. And so like usually this is like a what does success feel like? And then like how specifically are we going to measure that? And then there's all of this label magic that goes on. So making sure that we're using the right labels, and it looks complex, but like once you get into it, it's not that bad, because realistically you want your group and stage labels always applied. You want your category label always applied. For me, for our team, I'm not sure if other teams are doing this. I apply front end, back end, or UX if I know that it will require work from those teams, so that those people know to go in and add in issue weighting. So this one doesn't have any weight yet, but like it should. And so then the weight is used to calculate what can make its way into the milestone. Dan, the engineering manager, will look at weight across issues. For instance, we could see in 12.4, we had 23 issues and 34 total weight. Here we have 23 issues and 20 weight, but some issues don't have weight yet. So that's one thing we're waiting on. So I add in those labels, and then things that are really important, like this retention expiration policy is like, this is part of our product vision for the year. So this gets this product vision label. Things that are important and worth calling out in our kickoff video or in the kickoff document get the direction label. The direction label means that it'll show up in the kickoff document. It also means in the direction page, it'll show up here in the roadmap section too. So like here we could see.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Maybe I think it's all the way at the bottom. See all these issues.
Yeah.
Anything that's showing up here means that I have added the direction label. So not everything gets the direction label. I am making a decision to say like, these are the important features in a given milestone.
Right.
Whereas like, let's see, I don't want to say anything's not important, but like tracking the usage and adoption of a feature, that's important. We need to get that done, but all of our customers and users don't necessarily need to be aware that we're doing that. They can be, and if they went into the milestone, they can see it. But like
Mhm.
in terms of what's important for them, they're much more interested in learning about subgroup support for Maven, for example.
Right, right.
Okay, so now I've gone through and I've created all these issues. I've groomed them so that they have clear problems to solve, clear proposals, and clear success metrics, and then gone through and made sure that they're labeled properly. Um, Usually, then what happens is engineering will go through and add this deliverable tag as a way of accepting issues into the milestone. So the deliverable tag is a way of saying, yes, we agree that we will get this done, and we're accepting it into the milestone. And so then that translates into like, okay, now I know I could add this to the kickoff document, and I know I could talk about this in the kickoff video because we're committing to getting it done.
Right.
And then as the milestone goes on, there's, we're kind of always going through and commenting and updating, because what ends up happening is like this particular issue here, check for rename issues for renaming groups. So like I kind of came up with copy here that includes a link, right? But I learned later on that the link doesn't work in this particular modal. So we're always updating. We always want to go in and make sure as issues are
Mm-hmm.
expanded upon, that we're going in and actually updating it, because what ends up happening is when we do the release post, which is coming up for 12.4 soon, again, I have to assume that someone who's never seen or not familiar with the stage that's going to come in and click on this, if they come in and click and see that, oh, well, this link shouldn't be here, that's not what's happening, they'll think something's wrong. So there's like another level of grooming that's always happening, but specifically like as I'm writing the release post, I will say like, okay, can I clean this up more? Can I make it clear so that when people go from the blog post to the issue, that
Mm-hmm.
it's clear what we did and why. And so that sometimes what happens is like I'll rename issues, or for instance, like what's something that drives Jason crazy is like not crazy, but like here, like update the design for the container registry to include additional metadata. Like the words like update or add, like those we should probably not have in there for the blog post because they're not really helpful. Like phrase it in such a way that it's like simpler and you don't have extraneous words. Like that level of grooming is what we do like once we get to the release post. The other thing that's worth calling out, just to like take we're using these workflow labels, and if you've
Mm-hmm.
seen these, there's
Yep.
okay, so we're, for instance, these two issues are Ian's work after once he synthesizes the survey and user research results, is to update the design. So this will be solution validation. So once we update the design, we'll have to go to schedule some user interviews and do like some actual like user acceptance testing, or like basically show them the wireframes or a
Mm-hmm.
clickable prototype and say like, okay, could you do this
Can you do
action?
the thing with it? Yeah.
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 And so we have this other board, which looks like, I think this is it. It got moved.
Oh no. Yeah, I
It'll
can't
just take
find
me,
anything.
it'll take me 1 second. Let's
No
see.
worries.
So we also have weekly team meetings usually on Mondays, where we go through just like team updates. And this document, I'll share it with you now, actually, so you have it. This includes links to our planning board, our workflow board, which I was just talking about. It includes links to like our assignment board, a list of our bugs, the permissions model for all of our features, a knowledge base that's like a Google Doc that includes bugs that we've encountered and how we've resolved them for users with some
Oh wow.
documentation, and link to our YouTube playlist, which includes like our Think Big discussions and other team discussions, and then our team quality metrics for it's like the engineering view into how many
Mm-hmm.
bugs are getting resolved. Are we hitting our SLOs?
Right.
And then, we talk about just team based, Dan is usually running these meetings and giving us updates and stuff. So, okay, so I clicked on this workflow board. I'm going to move this. So there are things that are in the validation backlog, for instance, like these have not been prioritized. These are things that we need to validate. Like we've heard a lot about granular permissions for the container registry. And we've seen some ideas for how to do that. But I don't, we need to validate that is in fact a problem worth solving. So if we were going to pull this forward, we would figure out what research we need to do to actually do the problem validation. So the things that are in problem validation, actually this should move to, button to auto provision required files for Maven. We're not actually working on that. We're not actively validating that problem. So this one we're starting to think about like how do you set up your package registry integrations. So we're working, this will be next up on our problem validation. Is like, how do you set up the package registry? So this will maybe be the next thing that Ian and I start to work through from a research perspective. This, I think we're ready to move from problem validation to solution validation. So like being able to delete the images at the instance level. And again, just like, is instance level view of the container registry valuable? In some cases, this can be validated by like, we've already done some user research. We like got a lot of good feedback on the issues and we're ready to move it to solution validation.
Yeah.
We're still sort of getting used to this, but you could see like the solution validation is these designs here. And then we have some things that are blocked or scheduled or in dev. So I don't usually like look at this board. I usually look at the package planning board because I like to see what's scheduled out in milestones over the next like few milestones. So maybe I should pause and take a breath and see if you have any questions. I could stop sharing my screen for a second.
Well, I just have to say, Tim, this is so impressive. And I need you to teach everybody else. I'm serious. Like, this is exactly what I was hoping that I would find out from everybody. And I don't think I'm going to. So it makes my heart happy to know that you're planning so well and you're putting so much thought behind it, both individually and as a team. That really makes me feel good. And my only question is, how can I help? Or do I just need to meet with Ian on, like, I know he's got a monthly meeting for us to chat. Is that good? I don't want to put a lot of burden on Ian to do more than he can, because he also has to create designs and stuff for you guys too. But I know he enjoys it. So, yeah, like, so the reason I started this whole thing is I just get random requests from people, and it can be from designers, it can be from PMs, it could be from Jason, just finding things and going, hey, this looks good. I don't think anybody else has a good sense as much as you do of the prioritization of things that they send me. And I am yet just one researcher, and I've got 5, whatever we're calling them these days. It's not really stages, it's like groups within the stage that I'm helping out, which means 5 PMs, 5 designers, and they all have different things sometimes that they want me to do. And so what I'm trying to figure out is, how can I stay abreast of what you guys are planning and thinking of? And then how can I best negotiate when I have to say, I can't, I wish I could help, but I can't help. Can I do that later? Can I do that sooner? Those kinds of things. And so I'm just trying to figure out, like, how do I stay up to date with things that you guys are up to and thinking of? And when I have to negotiate, how best to do that with your process and everything. But I'm so impressed. I'm seriously, like, you need to like record yourself doing all that and send it to all the PMs. Is like, we're trying to set this for like release right now, and I'm going to show this to Hayana, because I think she'd get it. She'd find it very, very educational for our discussions with Orit and the release team.
Cool. Yeah, I'm always happy to review with anybody else and share what we're working on. It is definitely a team effort, and I
Mm-hmm.
have luckily Ian and Dan, and really all of the engineering team is very engaged in helping the process, which is nice.
That's
Um,
great.
I think in terms of um, helping us and getting involved, Ian and I are still working through it. So we figured out that there's some things we want to send through research and
Mm-hmm.
valid, like for problem validation, and those things will have some notice ahead of time that it's coming, like because
Yeah.
we're talking about it. So we'll probably be a couple of milestones ahead. So what would
Yep.
probably happen is we would say, okay, in 12.7 we want to start validating that we can handle this new feature or this new
Mm-hmm.
category or this new set of features. And so we would go about planning that work accordingly. So we've done a
Perfect.
good job of that.
Mm-hmm.
The other kind of issues are where Ian, like a small issue where Ian's going to create a design for something. We haven't done a great job of that yet, because like I just finished 12.5 and now Ian's playing catch up and he's doing designs. Ideally,
Right.
we would have our front end designs, the issues at least
Mm-hmm.
defined before the deadline. So we give Ian like several weeks before the
Mm-hmm.
milestone
Yeah.
to work on them. And then there's a decision tree that happens there probably where he says, do I need to validate this with users, or is this like safe enough that we could wait until we do our quarterly baseline review?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Okay.
that's the other thing I think that we'll probably want help with getting set up is we've created these jobs to be done. Ian's gone through and created the
Right.
UX baseline results, which is awesome. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
so on board with that process as like a way of measuring
Yeah.
success over time of our stage. Um, so I think what we'll probably want is like maybe some best practices around how to do that. Maybe we could set up like a longitudinal panel or something that
Mm-hmm.
we could like be reviewing with the same people consistently. Um, and so I think that again will be planned work. Quarterly, we want to review these jobs
Yeah.
to be done. Um, so yeah, I think that's probably the best way to do it is like the monthly conversation with Ian. I
Okay.
think it should come up. Oh,
Yeah.
we're planning on doing research, and here's some issues that we created, and we're going to go through. And then the quarterly baseline, maybe that's like another conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I think that's probably what we need in terms
Okay.
of staying alert, like updated on what's going on. I think there's two things that you could do. The easiest, lightest way thing is probably just watch the kickoff videos. They're like 5 minutes. They come out once a
Right.
month,
Mm-hmm.
and that's like super high level. Me talking very
Yeah.
quickly on what we're working on. It's a good way of just knowing what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you really want to read through the details, you can read through the strategy and direction page, which will include not only what we're working on, but what we're not working on, and like how our maturity index is like how are we proceeding on
Right.
that. That's more detailed. I know it's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
content, but so I'd say like if you watch the kickoff video and read the updates, you could just hear sort of generally what we're working on, and you could, if something like catches your interest, like, oh, that seems weird, that seems like a big feature, did we validate that solution, do we have
Yeah.
plans to? I think that sort of thing is helpful.
Okay.
And then I'm always available for meetings and discussions too, like if you ever want just to review anything or make sure that nothing's upcoming. But we're pretty good about making sure we're not going to like try and do everything all at once.
Yes. And you're also really good about not planning something and then deciding halfway through it that that's not a thing anymore. That's
Yeah.
happened to me a few times already, and I'm like, whoa, and that again is something that precipitated these conversations. It's like I need that to stop, because I don't have the luxury of working on something and then having it pulled halfway through because I could have been working on something else for somebody else. that
Yeah,
I
I'll
had to
say
put
that
off.
that probably happens at like a micro level. Like
Yeah,
I wrote a couple of issues where I was like put so much effort into thinking about them and writing them, and then after I finished writing them, I just like, there's no way that this will ever get built.
right.
There's no way that this is ever going to
Yeah.
happen. Scrap that. And then, but that was an
Yeah.
important step, as opposed to like,
Hmm.
this isn't important anymore. It was more just an
Right.
evolution of how I was thinking of solving the problem.
Yeah, that's different. What happened to me was I had dropped everything, talked to 6 people, had recruited, talked to 6 people, and then it got moved to the backlog for the whole year, for the rest of the fiscal year. I'm like, okay, that would have been nice to know ahead of time because I have 4 more things that people want in 12.5 that I put off to do this because I thought that was told that was the most important thing at the time. So
Yeah, that's
I'm
tough.
not really worried about you guys doing that to me. You have not before, and I do not anticipate that happening in the future. But that's one of the reasons I wanted to chat. This was great. Thank you so much for telling me like all the processes that you go through. I think in all of my years, that's the most well-defined process from a PM
Thank
that I
you
have
so
ever
much.
seen. Really, like it's really, really well done. And I now I know why I hardly ever hear from you or Ian because you guys have it down so well. So I'll just focus on our monthly meetings. I might keep that document you shared with me that has all the happy links.
Uh-huh.
I might just peruse through there. On our end, my boss Sarah, who has now changed her name to Jones. She just got married, so it
Oh,
was
cool.
O'Donnell, but I think it's Jones now. She has a Kanban board that she wants us to keep up to date with everything that we're working on, so they can ask for more headcount because we need it. And so I might go through some of those backlogs and put some of those things on there as research backlogs, yet to be determined whether Ian does it or I do it, or we partner with them, just so they can get a sense of how much is there, how much work is coming, how much work has not been tapped yet because of lack of warm bodies to do
Yeah.
it. But yeah, I think that's going to be really valuable.
Okay. And you can always post questions in that Google Doc too for our team
Okay.
meetings. And even if you're not there, they'll get read and discussed. So you could say, here's the Kanban board. Is all of your research issues on here? And it'll get read
Yeah.
in the meeting, and we can make sure, if not, that we add stuff as well. So things can happen
Oh, perfect.
asynchronously too.
Oh,
So
that'd be excellent. Yes. Totally.
yeah.
Cool. Well, Tim, thank you so much for sharing this with me and chatting. I really do appreciate it. And I look forward to our meeting. I did actually reply to Ian and tell him that's a Sunday because he just put it for
Oh,
every 20th.
yeah.
So I'm sure we'll meet on the 21st or something. But
Okay.
yeah, I look forward to it.
Same. It was great talking to you. And if you share this will you post this to YouTube, you think?
I don't know. I think I might just send it to Hayana first because I just
Okay.
recorded it to my computer. So I'm not sure if it'll be on YouTube or not. I can if you
If
want.
you need help getting it on YouTube, I'm happy to help, because I think it would be helpful for Ian to, or maybe the rest of the package team. So like,
Oh, yeah.
um, if you do, I mean, if you need help
I might just send you the video.
yeah, send me the video, and then
Yeah.
I'll post it, and that'll
Okay.
be nice and easy, and I'll just have it in our package channel so we save it and
Perfect.
stuff like that. Especially now that you paid me all those nice compliments.
Well, it's true. It is true. Trust me, it is true. All right, Tim. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.